Pierogies. We're still excited to have you, but we are very interested, very excited that you all came out to be a part of this process, because it is so important to the city to hear your voice and how you want your money to be spent and where your priorities are and what you have to say about what we've got coming down the pipeline. I do also want to say, I said this at the last one, but I think there's a lot of merit in having these small group discussions, especially over dinner. My great-grandma made pierogies, and when they had their family dinners, my family seems to solve a lot of the world's problems over pierogies. So hopefully that will be the case again tonight. I do just want to take a moment to thank Leaf and the staff here at the Mount Washington Healthy Active Living Center for having us tonight and accommodating us. I'd also like to recognize some special guests. We have Council President Bruce Krause from District 3. Thank you for being here, sir. And I know she's here, and our Councilwoman from District 2 who has said that she would like to say something. So Councilwoman Teresa Kale-Smith. Here, I have it. Check.
Thank you. I just want to thank everyone for coming out, and I hope you enjoy your pierogies. The next time you're in my district, we're going to have Lebanese food. So I hope you enjoy the pierogies and Polish food tonight.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And I would like to now toss it over to David Hutchinson from our Office of Management and Budget for a little bit of information about the capital budget.
Sure. Thank you very much, Molly. Like she said, my name is David Hutchinson. I'm the Capital Budget Manager. I work in the Office of Management and Budget. Our whole capital team is here tonight, along with some really great panelists, which we're going to get to in a little bit. But tonight, we have three really important goals. The first is for everybody to learn a little bit more about the capital budget. The second, which I think is my favorite, is for each of you to understand more about a different neighborhood, a different part of town. One of Pittsburgh's strengths, in my opinion, is having 90 really different neighborhoods. Different problems and different strengths are in all these different places. Some places there's an affordable housing pressure. In other places they could really use some market rate development. So one of the things the capital budget really kind of shows is how different neighborhoods need different things. And the third, which is also probably equally important, is the city needs your input and your feedback on developing the 2019 capital budget. How we use your information, we're going to get to in just a little bit, but be sure to stick around for the surveys. I've got Leah holding all of the cookies hostage until survey time, so if you want a cookie, you've got to stick around. Tonight, we're going to be using a participatory approach. The deliberative democracy format of tonight's meeting is really important. It helps us in a few different ways. It uses small group discussions and questions of an expert panel to help you better understand the city's goals and the capital budget process. So let's get started. On page 1, the inside panel of your handout, you'll see the schedule for tonight. There's going to be three really important chunks of it. The first is this one, which is an introduction to the capital budget. Then we're going to break out into our small group discussions, facilitated by your moderators. Thanks again, moderators, for volunteering your time tonight. And last, we're going to have questions to an expert panel. I'm really excited about tonight's panel. I said it in the last week, but I have trouble getting meetings with some of these people, so you're in really good shape to get some good information out of city officials. And last, we're going to close out with some surveys, so be sure to stick around, and that's when we're going to be getting data from you that's going to feed into the 2019 capital budget. On the top of page 2 of your briefing packet, you're going to have some more information about what actually is the capital budget. Additionally, there's 2 other resources on your table. There's a little table tent, that trifold, that gives a really quick introduction to what's in the capital budget and what's not in the capital budget. So there's some really important things that we as people who live in Pittsburgh rely on, like public transportation, which is what I took to get to this meeting. That's not in the capital budget, that's Port Authority. Police coverage, that's not in the capital budget, that's operating budget. There's a bunch of other things that are in the capital budget, though, that we really want to focus tonight's discussion on. So first of all, also there's the actual 2018 capital budgets. There should be one at every table, so if you want a chance to leaf through that, you're welcome to do that. So the city has 2 separate budgets. We have the capital budgets on the tables, and we also do an operating budget, which is salaries, pension obligations, employee health care, office supplies, all that kind of smaller day-to-day stuff. But their budget's bigger, I do have to say. We have some operating budget people here. The capital budget is the physical environment, though. It's the built infrastructure, streets, sidewalks, parks, pools, playgrounds, ball fields, bridges, all the things you interact with physically in the city. A lot of that's in the capital budget. These larger projects projects can take millions of dollars and multiple years to complete. So for us, with limited resources in the city, our population shrunk since our peak in the 1950s. We need to be really careful about how we prioritize capital budget improvements. So within the capital budget, there's a series of kind of 2 pages. If you flip through it, this is an example of one of the pages. This is called a capital improvement program. So specifically for this one, we're looking at the Charles Anderson Bridge project. We do 6-year plans. We actually have a reference for last year as well, but we do 6-year plans out. We want to make sure that we know how we intend to spend money in the future. Some of our assets actually have 10 or 20-year plans as well, but for the budgets, we just print the next 6 years. The capital budget is also referred to as the capital improvement plan, which is kind of like all of these individual capital improvement plans stacked into one. And that gets us to a couple more panes. Gets us to a really big picture plan for how we intend to spend the money. You can go one more, Brendan. So this is our financial future with the capital budget for the next 6 years. In terms of the capital budget process, you can flip to page 3. It'll walk you through the different parts of the calendar. In April, the mayor provides his priorities. The priorities are the mayor's vision, his values for what he wants to see in the budget. We're going to get into those in a little bit. In May, the Office of Management and Budget issues requests for proposals so that departments and council offices have a chance to fill out the proposal form. In June, we have our capital budget deliberative hearings. We have 2 of them. This is the second one. In July, all of the proposal forms are due back to our office. In August, we spend a lot of time meeting with departments to get a sense of how they prioritize the projects they've submitted to us. We also do a round of technical reviews. So if council submits a proposal for a bridge, we want to make sure that the timeline is correct, that the budget makes sense, that it's feasible. So we have those series of meetings as well. And then we actually have the Capital Program Facilitation Committee, which reviews all of the proposals and scores them. They make recommendations to the mayor in the form of a summary report. In September, we have a preliminary budget from the mayor's office. We do a second one in November, which is actually kind of fun whenever he presents it to City Council. Throughout December, City Council has an opportunity to do their own due diligence. They get to bring in the departments to council, and you can watch those on TV as well, and really grill them on what they think the priorities are for their department, how they think it's going to help the city and the people who live in it. So for 2019, the mayor's got 9 capital budget priorities. I have to stress these are in no particular order. You can find these at the bottom of page 2 in your packet. The priorities are the guiding principles for the capital budget process. These help the departments understand what the mayor wants the budget to look like. And so these are shared with the department directors and the council offices early in the capital budget process. They have usually a month or 2 to really think about these principles and develop proposals that are going to fit into this vision. So there's 3 that I think are really important. One is critical infrastructure. A lot of what the city builds is moving towards the 21st century urban environment. And for us, we need things that are reliable, secure, efficient, and technology enabled. Another one is critical communities. We want to make sure that we are serving communities in need, that they have opportunities in the city, and that this is a city for all. And also we've had some really great opportunities recently with green infrastructure in terms of using our parks as an opportunity to help manage stormwater. And we've had some great projects too with solar trees and really trying to focus on fuel efficiency with our fleet. So page 4 has some details on how capital budget proposals are scored. Once departments and city council offices have submitted their proposals, it's evaluated by that subset of the Capital Program Facilitation Committee, which is made up of members of our office, the Office of Management and Budget, council's budget office, I believe Bill Urbanik was here, saw him earlier, and a member from the controller's office. So that team will score the proposals against the criteria on that page, and then all of the scores are sorted from highest to lowest. We apply the funding constraints for that year, and that's how we come up with each team's capital budget, proposed capital budget. The projects are ranked, and the mayor's office and city council offices receive the rankings. We take those rankings into consideration. The mayor then introduces the preliminary budget in September. So we're going to transition into small group discussions. We're going to have about 15 minutes for each question. The first question is, how well do you think the priorities identified by the mayor will address the needs of the city and the needs of you and your neighbors? What other priorities might you add to the list? And just a quick reminder, moderators, if there's some really spirited discussion, maybe mark that down as an opportunity as a question for the expert panel. So you guys are welcome to start discussing that question. I'll be back in 15 minutes.
I'm the Director of Housing, also at the Urban Redevelopment Authority of Pittsburgh.
Good evening, Ross Chapman, Acting Director of City Parks, Parks and Recreation.
Bill Urbanek, I'm City Council's Budget Director.
Mike Gable, Director for the Department of Public Works.
Hi, I'm Jen Persudi. I'm the Director of the Office of Management and Budget for the City of Pittsburgh. Hi, I'm Sarah Kinzer. I serve as the Assistant Director for Licensing and Administration with the Department of Permits, Licenses, and Inspections.
I'm Jeff Skellick, the Deputy Director of Mobility and Infrastructure for the City of Pittsburgh. Hi, I'm Jeff Skellick. I'm the Deputy Director for Mobility and Infrastructure.
Hi, Sam Ashlaw. I'm the city's Chief Financial Officer.
And I'd also like to recognize Director Wendell Histrick from the Department of Public Safety, who is here as well. All right, so let's get to the meat and potatoes of this. What table wants to start? How about you all? We're at one. One question to start, yes. My table came up with this question, and I think that this, yes. Hello, everybody. I think that this question will fall under a couple different people's jurisdictions, so I won't ask specifically. The question is, what are the plans for people who are being displaced because of new housing developments? In particular, are there plans to be more transparent and make sure that the plans are not only up to the developers themselves? And is there also any plans for a more tight timeline to get people back to their neighborhoods after they are displaced?
Yeah, I can start and we can pass it around. What was that? Oh, stand up. Sure. Hello. Some of the things that, I guess, that are being worked on with your capital budget dollars relative to this issue are the city about a year and a half ago did a report through the Affordable Housing Task Force to identify what the problem is in the city at that time. affordable housing. Since then, Tom and other folks can talk about the URA's involvement, but then post that through city planning, we have contracted with experts to help us around ideas of inclusionary zoning and pursuing an ADA report that was released at the end of last year around inclusionary zoning, which we've looked at in a mandatory fashion, but also looked at and have actually passed in an incentive way. So as a part of one of the neighborhood plans that we did in Uptown, the Uptown Eco Innovation District, we for the first time, as a part of development, allowed for a bonus for developers if they were building affordable housing, that they were allowed for greater height in the buildings that they were able to build. And right now have an ordinance before City Council to do the same along the 35 miles of the city's riverfronts. And so, so those are projects that that we have pursued, primarily where there is neighborhood planning or other planning that really, then kind of directs us to do that. And so we're, working to implement the recommendations of the task force as well as the recommendations of these neighborhood plans that are, driving, giving us more data as to where it is and what type of housing that we need in our respective neighborhoods.
Just a few things from the URA's perspective. Again, working off of all the great work that the Affordable Housing Task Force did with the leadership of the mayor and city council. There's been a housing opportunity fund that's been established, it's been created, it's been funded, and it will start to be implemented in 2018. So that will provide really local resources that have never really existed on this scale before in order to, to start new programs and add additional resources at the local level to preserving affordable housing, to creating affordable housing, to address some of the issues that you've talked about. One of the other things, and again, this came out of the task force, was we really need to focus a lot of our efforts on preservation, because it's a lot cheaper to preserve good quality affordable housing rather than creating it new. So the city, the URA, we've been working with a number of stakeholders, other governmental bodies, HUD, Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency, to really look at and categorize all of the affordable housing resources in the city so that we can be proactive to not be caught flat-footed where properties are going to go out of affordable compliance. That was not the situation in Penn Plaza. Penn Plaza, they were not deed restricted affordable units, but there's roughly 15,000 deed restricted affordable housing units across the city, and it's really important that we keep as many of those affordable, really indefinitely, permanently, to the extent that we can. And that'll be another focus of resources through the Opportunity Fund and through the preservation of affordable housing. Specifically with Penn Plaza, just one other thing. There is a commitment, there's a project that's been funded with tax credits called Mellon's Orchard that's being built essentially in the same neighborhood as Penn Plaza. And there's a commitment on the part of the developer and the city for all the affordable housing units built on that site, that Penn Plaza residents who were displaced have first priority to return. So that is one specific thing. Though the building, while it's funded, it won't really start construction until probably early 2019.
All right, thank you. All right, how about this table?
I hope you're not going to ask me to stand up. So, we just to give a couple examples first of what we're going to be asking in our question, we have things like, UPMC, and at the moment specifically Mercy Hospital, wants to use taxpayer money to build this new hospital that only half the people in Pittsburgh can use because of our insurance. You have things like the BRT is trying to bring in out-of-state, out-of-city money, and at the detriment of, Mon Valley almost lost bus service. Uptown's still going to be losing bus service to low-income food shopping. We have things like Penn Plaza, where I think it broke federal law, because I think you have to have the displaced people to move into before you can get rid of the old housing. And then, of course, we have the PWSA Dominion takeover. We all know about this. What can we do to ensure that the city works to benefit its citizens and not the big corporations?
Who wants to start?
If somebody here that represents the mayor's office, maybe you guys can start.
Yeah, I'll start.
There you go.
I think to one of your points, you touched on a few key items, and I think if you go back to Dave's presentation where he spoke about what the mayor's priorities are, those 9 individual items, that marks a stark difference, I think, from some of the priorities last year and in the years before for those of you who attended. It really shows a number of key focus areas to address some of those vulnerable populations that you address. And this also follows off on a lot of the One Pittsburgh initiative that the mayor has been working on, and all of the panel members here can talk a little bit more about like their specific policy areas that you addressed.
Can I address
Sure.
We'll do one follow-up, and then we gotta.
Well, just to go with that, we're looking here at the evaluating proposals. We have the list, the weighted, where the priorities are. And I'd like to say that quality of life is number 6, and it's only a 4 out of 10. We've got, ability to leverage non-city funds to fund the project over quality of life and over public support. And that's not a government. That is, that's not for the people. That's for the money and the government and the businesses. That's not for us.
Yeah, sorry, just one quick note, a technical correction on the priorities. I did not do the greatest job of explaining them. The weighting, everything's on a 10-point scale and it gets multiplied by whatever the factor is for the weighting. So if it was a 10 out of 10, it would be 40 points. Something like matching funds would be weighted, would have a multiplier of 5, things like that.
Right, but quality of life is less than matching funds.
Okay, we are going to move to the next table because we do want to make sure everyone's questions are asked, but these are 3 questions and another very similar question may come up. So this table.
Thanks for hosting this event tonight. So we recognize that there are a lot of bold initiatives underway in the budget, and in that light we thought to ask the panel, what kind of really bold move can the city take to jumpstart growth and have knock-on effects that are really impactful downstream and affect all these different priorities? We know that a lot of the capital stuff is about fixing things that are breaking and sort of moving the needle forward, but what's a really bold move in the plan that we can get and rally behind that'll have knock-on effects downstream? Something like rewilding property that isn't being used.
I'll take a shot at that. So my name is Grant Urban. In addition to being assistant director in the city planning department, I also serve as the role of chief resilience officer. Director Ashbaugh referenced the One Pittsburgh plan, which is one of the these are bold initiatives, and to themselves and looking at them in kind of the small increment of today, they might look like small moves. But in effect, we are basically changing the landscape of the city, whether it's through the preservation of over 400 acres of land in the southern area of the city, or planning for the development of a $300 million transit system that will connect the second and third largest business districts in the state of Pennsylvania and provide infill development in a neighborhood that hasn't seen revitalization or generation of economic opportunity for well over a generation. Those are examples of bold moves. But it's also being the connecting point to making some of the simple connective tissue to projects like that. So whether that's improving how we're delivering street paving or rethinking our relationship with water and how we manage water, whether that's stormwater or water delivery. So one of the key aspects of the One Pittsburgh plan is to encourage kind of the intersection with those bold moves with not just the resources of city government, but also to think about how the private sector, nonprofit partners like UPMC was mentioned, how workforce becomes a key component of not just investing hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure, but how can a Pittsburgh resident benefit from that investment by working on the construction or the design or the planning or the actual benefit of it. So part of our effort is to start to connect that tissue together, from workforce development to the infrastructure improvement to the end benefit that we see.
Awesome, thank you. All right, we have a question here in the back. What's that? Here we go. So this wasn't all right, sure. This wasn't a group decided question, but it came up by the woman who had just left, and I thought it was a great point. We'd like to know what's being done in the upcoming year to help our homeless population, specifically providing more shelters that aren't just open, like such as cold weather shelters, and what's being done to help move them into more permanent housing and to outreach to them.
Yeah, it's not technically under the city's direction, but a lot of the homeless programs are coordinated through Allegheny County. We really have, a really an amazing system of service delivery in Allegheny County through the homeless for homeless prevention. And I mean, where that system is gone is toward, and a lot of this is from HUD funding directives, but everything's going toward like a rapid rehousing. So where that's the primary goal is to just get people into housing as soon as possible without any barriers to that. And they don't have. So that's really the goal of all the agencies, and that's what the county is working toward. I know that I'm not personally involved, but I know that there is a group, and I don't know if anybody else on the panel can speak to it, but there's a group that's working on another shelter in a centralized location in the city. Exactly, I think they call it a low barrier or no barrier shelter for just that purpose, to get people off the street and get them to where at least the first step and where they can eventually find a permanent housing solution.
Thank you. And we actually also have another resource here, Sally Stadelman, who is the bigberg.com manager for the Department of Public Safety, and she can tell you a little bit about what that is. While Mr. Cummings is correct that the majority of services are through the Department of Human Services, we have a website managed by the city called Big Berg, like the city, not the animal.com. Pull it up on your phone, and we look to get the free low barrier services in Allegheny County on this page. And it actually came to the city because we use it as a back end for our police officers, but totally open for everyone to use. We're always looking for places to present and additional resources to add. So we have another question here in the back.
The things that most concerned our group was sidewalks, crosswalks, housing, especially disability housing, transportation, and garbage cans. Not just, example, we have garbage cans. I live on the hill all along Center Avenue, but if you go beyond Center Avenue, there's
in through 311. So if you do have any inquiries about any sidewalks that need fixed, please submit a 311. We are checking those out. And we're looking for the 2019 capital budget, putting in a line item to address sidewalks. We're also going to put a line item in to address ADA ramps. And those are going to be addressed the same way.
Any other takers up at the, sorry, I'm all the way in the back here. Awesome. We have a question here, guys.
Hi, I'm curious to know, what can the city do to advance plans that communities bring forth?
What sort of steps?
So if a community has a mandate for green spaces or for affordable housing, what can the city do to support those kind of initiatives that are starting at a neighborhood level?
You want to take it? Well, from a development perspective, I mean, the URA, that's what we do every day, really. We work with community organizations. We try to work with community organizations and developers, typically in partnership with each other, to advance plans. So if you have a plan that involves bricks and mortar, either affordable housing or commercial development in a main corridor, I mean, the URA would be the place to go, and that's exactly what we do every day.
As to a series of other plans, I'd say that there's a lot of work that we work with communities on plans that have been done around how to implement certain aspects of them. So, I talked about the riverfronts and zoning. That's based off of a history of 20 years of plans that have not been done necessarily by the city, but by the city in concert with community organizations for things like the Allegheny River Green Boulevard plan, or other riverfront plans that then led to the work that we've been doing over the last 2 years of rewriting the development regulations to be able to try to translate those plans into something that when developers come in, that they are building to the plans that have been created. Then in addition, the city, in some of the places that planning hasn't gone on, are working with organizations, whether it's on certain priorities, like we are in the Garfield neighborhood with zoning regulations around accessory dwelling units, or that we're actually working to create neighborhood plans in a number of neighborhoods in the city where that planning hasn't taken place, or that only little pieces of planning have taken place, and trying to turn that into comprehensive plans for those neighborhoods. Where, I talked about the Uptown and the Eco Innovation District. Right now, the city is also working in the Homewood, Greater Hazelwood, and Manchester Chateau neighborhoods on neighborhood plans as well, to develop those plans and that vision in these neighborhoods as development starts to come, so that those recommendations for development, for open space, for for safety and mobility, those things are then in place to then feed future capital budget asks that we as departments ask for, or that and also trying to understand out of all of those priorities that the community has, what things are ones that the city can take on, which ones are ones that other nonprofits can take on, how we can kind of collectively work towards that common vision. So I hope that answers your question.
Ms. Table?
So we had a lot of discussion at our table about infrastructure. And so in light of all the increased amount of development here in the city, and with the conversations about possible influxes of even more in the coming year or years, one of the thoughts that we contemplated was, what is the city doing, what is the city considering to do to make sure that our infrastructure is prepared to be able to handle what would be a substantially increased amount of demand.
I'll take the first pass and then you can pick up. Okay. So I work in the Economic Development Department at the URA, and there are a few different types of public intervention that we take on when it comes to infrastructure improvements. One is we
we have a number of tax diversion tools, TIF and TRID, which basically looks to new development and looks to leverage that private investment and use that diversion of a portion of the future taxes generated by that private investment and use it for public infrastructure. So every community is different. The residents have different needs. And so one way to improve infrastructure is by leveraging that new development for public infrastructure, right? There are other ways we could look at managing growth for new development, but and there are other ways to stimulate growth, right? Such as tax abatements, which are tax breaks. But TIFs and other tax diversion tools are very useful in funding new infrastructure, and we've also been pretty successful in using those tax diversion tools to raise state and federal money.
And from my side, from our existing roads, we're working with PennDOT, the state, federal monies, and also our Office of Budget to increase our dollars to pave our roads and keep them, sound and stable for, all the new development happening.
Actually, if I can add to that as well. One of the other things that the planning department has been working a lot with both Carnegie Mellon, University of Pittsburgh, and the U.S. Department of Energy and our local utilities has been around utility coordination. So looking at ways in which we can reduce costs by, if one project is happening, can we coordinate that infrastructure repair and replacement for those things underground? But also, can we start to plan in the future for new energy infrastructure? So whether that's solar infrastructure or geothermal or district energy systems, how we start to integrate that into the development process on the front end rather than thinking of it as an afterthought.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah, so with a number of these concerns, affordable housing, good public transportation, and I'm sure there are others, we're concerned about how do we know what's mandated. On page 4, there's this criteria mandates. It says extent to which the project helps the city meet new or existing mandates. How do we know what are existing mandates, what they are? So we can use that as leverage. If we know something's mandated, we can say, hey, it's mandated.
Clarity on that from? Wait, do we have any clarity on that or any source of cool, thanks.
I think one of the things as far as mandates, they vary over time. As you know, it's not a city-funded project, but as you know, PWSA, Water and Sewer Authority, is mandated by either the state or federal government to perform certain actions. So that would be that stuff that's in the news and something you'd be more familiar with. There could also be other mandates as far as from a public safety perspective. Years ago, when I started working with the city, we were under a consent decree from the federal government, so which required a lot of investment in police technology. So those are just examples of some specific mandates. It's not necessarily something that you as a community would know about, but I think as you are active in city government or your community groups and are staying true to what's going on in government, are familiar with what we are mandated to perform. And those are considerations that come out through the budget process. There could be something that happens 30 days from now that we're not aware of as we're entering the budget process, but we are required to implement those things. As Director Gable said, ADA is another great example of things that we are mandated to. So I know some of the questions related to that.
Awesome.
from the URA perspective, a couple of things. I mean, you bring up some great points, Lee. We have, we're now, we'll be implementing actually it's been implemented, a new process, a new platform for issuing RFPs from the URA perspective to where it's very transparent about what RFPs are going on. We're not being the ones dictating who receives the RFP, but it's a website called Public Purpose. So we can certainly help anybody get signed up for that would want to. We have a Diamante Walker is a recent hire at the URA who's been really aggressive in meeting out in the communities, meeting one-on-one with businesses with the whole goal of trying to get minority and women businesses, Section 3 businesses that get greater access to the great programs that we have, so that they can participate as a vendor. So that's really it's something that the URA believes strongly in, and I think a lot of it comes down to communication, word of mouth, but our doors are open. Diamante's a great person. She's a great resource, and she would be happy to engage with any community group and even any individual business or a person really one-on-one. So this is just a couple of things that we're doing on our end.
So really quick, specific to the capital budget, we've had two initiatives. Sorry, over. Hello. Specific to the capital budget, we've had two initiatives really centered on transparency. One last year, we worked with INP and Berg's View to get all of the capital budget deliverables on a GIS map layer. So you can go in and check and see what the dollar amount is, the exact location, and then this year we added a field for the status. So you can see if it's just planned, if it's in progress, or if it's been completed. The other that launched in early 2018 are those green pages. Balancing Act has been a really great tool to connect people with how their tax dollars are getting spent. You can put in your own income, your property value, and get an itemized receipt basically of how the city spends your money. Also with the capital budget simulator, there's an opportunity at every single project to send comments back to us. It's almost like 311 for the budget. So if there's things that you think we're falling down on, feel free to submit a comment, and I'll be sure to boomerang those around to the relevant departments.
I'm Tom Link with UR. Just to kind of piggyback on what Tom said. I mean, in terms of individual businesses, I mean, we work closely with Diamante. A program that we just launched is our micro enterprise program, which we've launched. We're rolling it. We've already closed a handful of loans, which is really microfinancing for very small businesses who need up to $20,000 to just either start a business or to expand a business. We've had success with that. Another thing we do, just in terms of transparency to get ourselves out into the cities, somewhere between 8 to 10 times a year, we do small business resource fairs within our neighborhood business districts. We take our staff out to the neighborhoods and the business districts, working with our community partners to bring our tools and our staff really into the business districts to ensure to the best extent possible that folks are aware of the resources that we have and making face-to-face connections. We also have a government resource fair that does that happen? Combined now with all the various departments, including the URA and city departments that affect small businesses, are in one room essentially, and work to have folks come to be introduced to make those face-to-face connections.
So just one last thing. Again, I'm Lee Haller from the Department of Innovation and Performance. One of the things that we're responsible for is all of the different engagement channels for the city of Pittsburgh. So, for example, City Channel Pittsburgh is here tonight filming the session. That's one of those engagement channels. We're also responsible for helping to coordinate all of the different social media accounts that each of the different departments in the city have. We run the city's print shop, which is all the print media that comes out of the city, and then we're also responsible for all the web resources. So understand the point about not everyone has access to a computer, but one of the things that we're trying to do is better coordinate messaging across those different platforms, because people do have access to cable, some do have access to social media streams that the city puts out. Others have access through their computer or their smartphone to the city's website, which is an example. Just last year, we relaunched in a mobile-friendly version, and many of the resources that people have referred to tonight are available on the website. So we know we're not perfect in terms of transparency and access to information. We're constantly trying to make the city's website more accessible and more user-friendly. One example of that is that we
powerful search engine last year, so we actually track every single search term that someone puts in that search engine, identify all of the searches that didn't provide any useful results to people, and then put out content to address those issues. So that's something that we look at on a weekly basis to make sure that the information that we're putting out there is as relevant and accessible as possible.
And then I just want to add one more thing. Like the URA, the city has what we call Beacon, which is our tool that we use to alert everyone of our RFP opportunities at the city. Our procurement team is always doing vendor outreach events, as well as our EORC group, and then also Molly's group is out in the community, daily, weekly, every day, monthly. And so, they always can be reached as well. So, yes.
And I just want to, sorry, this is Molly from Community Affairs. You can always, if someone doesn't have internet access for something like this, where they want to look something up, they can always call our office, and that's 412-255-4773, and we can help you out with that.
And just one more resource, we have for the Department of Permits, Licenses, and Inspections, we have a website called Building Eye, where you can see all permits and citations that are occurring in your area. So I encourage you to check it out. Thanks.
All right. Back here, I believe you are the question asker, yes.
Hi. So we have one clarification that we want to request, and then the question from our table. So our clarification is from Andrew Dash. If you could clarify for us, sort of in what instances outside consultants are brought in to facilitate plans for communities versus when community plans generated internally. One of the folks at our table is from Homewood, and her perceived experience is that the community developed a plan, but that wasn't implemented, but an outside consulting company was brought in to develop an alternate plan. So we're curious, sort of like, what's the clarification around when of those things is appropriate or when they happen? And then the question from our table is actually around what, if anything, can the city do to encourage redevelopment and rehabilitation of existing properties and lots in lieu of new development?
I'll take the clarification, and I'm happy to talk in more detail later. So in the 3 neighborhoods in which we're currently doing community plans, in the Homewood, Hazelwood, and Chateau Manchester, we have, through capital budget dollars, brought on consultants to assist us in that process. Those consultants are selected in concert with the community, so we have kind of a series of committees as a part of this, and are working with a community partner in Homewood, specific to Homewood case, that is the Homewood Collaborative, which is made up of a series of organizations that are working in the Homewood neighborhoods, and so the membership of the collaborative, as well as city and URA representation, we're a part of the group that selected the consultant that then has been doing the work to create the neighborhood plan. And we are maybe about 2/3 of the way through that process, so we have not created. There hasn't been. We haven't come to the point where there's a draft plan that's been presented to the community yet. We just had our second community meeting back on May 10th. So I hope that so with those 3, we like I said, we have hired a consultant to act as an extension of staff. That consultant was selected through a joint kind of city and community partnership. As to the redevelopment question, others can talk a little bit more around the development side. One thing I can talk about is relative to lots. And so the city about 2 years ago created what's called the Adopt a Lot program. And so city, based on population decline, right? We were a city of 650,000, we're now a city of 305,000. In kind of that legacy of population decline, have a number of lots that have, through neglect, turned to come into the city's ownership. Not because we wanted them, but because they were neglected and then eventually taken through a process known as the treasurer's sale to come into city ownership.
And so about 2 years ago, we created that program to understand that we have these vacant lots that we didn't necessarily want, that many times are in the, in neighborhoods where the development pressure isn't great, and that we are getting complaints about those city properties. And so, they're not necessarily, they're working as a blight in those neighborhoods. And in a way of trying to turn that blight into an asset, created the Adopt a Lot program so that interested residents, interested community organizations can lease or license those lots for no charge to be able to do, rain, flower, or food gardens. So that, that again, if that vacant lot on your block, is there and, nobody's doing anything with it, there is the opportunity for residents to be able to do that. And the creation of that program was through a process known as the Vacant Lot Toolkit, which was something that we were able to use city capital budget dollars to create. Others talk about redevelopment. Sorry, what was that? The program is the Adopt a Lot program. Anybody else on the development side?
Just some of the things in terms of, I think one of your questions was redevelopment as opposed to new construction. So certainly I think it is becoming more important to rehab. It's much more economical. We have great housing stock in certain city neighborhoods, and many community groups are trying to keep that strong. So that is something that the URA does support through its programs, either through development, through renovating and reselling homes ideally for home ownership. We're active in a number of communities. Hazelwood, for example, is doing that. They're doing that here in Lawrenceville. We also have programs for people to purchase and rehab a home to make it your home to live in yourself. So we have programs there. Another initiative, relatively in its infancy, is the Pittsburgh Land Bank. So that will be a vehicle where I think it'll be a lot easier for people to purchase city-owned properties. So where the land bank can act as a clearinghouse to accelerate the eventual transfer of real estate that's currently city-owned because it was tax delinquent, acquired by the 3 taxing bodies, but where the land bank will be able to transact on that, clear the title, and be able to move properties more quickly into a development scenario.
And I'll just add to that, from a commercial perspective, it's sort of core to what we do. I mean, we have several programs that really are designed to support the rehabilitation of existing buildings within our business districts. We have our core grant programs, which are our facade programs for existing buildings. So we provide grants to property owners to do full building facade improvements, individual storefronts. We have grants for that as well. The debt financing, if you're a small business, if you're a neighborhood, you're a developer, and you're in your neighborhood, and you're a community group. These are tools that we have, and I would say, from a real estate perspective, the vast majority of the financings that we do, at least through my shop, are rehabilitating existing buildings. Even as I drove in here, I was trying to take stock of, frankly, who might ask about individual deals we did. So as I drove in, coming up Butler Street, many of the facades you see that are rehabilitated, many of those properties we use the tools that we have. You even think about the Row House Cinema, which was closed for many, many years. A very difficult project for a variety of reasons. We help through our programs to support that, to fill the term of our normal financing gaps, GAPS, gaps that can be difficult to fill with private sources of capital. Our tools are designed to do that and work with neighborhoods, and work with local businesses and local developers to do great projects and rehab and put back to use buildings within their neighborhoods, within their business districts, and of course within the city as a whole. So.
And one thing that I forgot to mention on kind of the preservation or redevelopment of existing structures versus versus new building. So in Uptown we did the neighborhood plan, and as a part of that they said the eastern section of the neighborhood, we like the buildings that are there. We want when redevelopment, there's a lot of vacant buildings, but when redevelopment happens, we want those buildings to be a part of the fabric that we have as our neighborhood. And so as we wrote zoning code, and development regulations in that area, that was something that we incentivized there, because that was something that came through their neighborhood planning process that they felt was important. And then another tool that is currently in development is our conservation districts. And those are I guess the easiest way to discuss that is that they're almost, they're somewhere between traditional zoning and historic districts. So, the city can preserve buildings through historic districts. Usually those places have to have a lot of historic integrity to become historic districts, and then have very strict regulations on how they can be developed. What conservation districts do is try to, again, are a little bit more kind of designed than our traditional zoning districts, but allow for those kind of core values of the community. If it's where the buildings are placed on the lot, or what type of feature, where windows are, or where driveways can be placed, or those types of things, to make sure that new development is compatible with existing development as it comes up.
Also, and I just wanted to add, from the Office of Community Affairs, we also have we offer some programs at a community level for all sorts of different things. So we do one called Love Your Block, which is a neighborhood beautification for neighborhood or community-based organizations that they can apply for small grants through our office to do those beautification projects. So thank you. And this table, who next? Awesome, Corey. Thank you.
One of our questions was kind of already dealt with. So, given some of the weather issues we've had this last year, we've had flooding, we've had landslides, this kind of hits environment and also infrastructure. What's the city doing to prepare and to deal with those things, and also to potentially aid people should they happen? Because most of us don't have insurance that actually covers those.
I think it's you, me, and Greg.
That's good. I'll start this one. My job is to work on the landslides. Right now, we have a running list of landslides that have been going on in the city of Pittsburgh. As everybody's well aware, this is something not normally that we have had to cure in the past couple of years. This year's been, we have dealt with a lot of them. Greenleaf really set us aside. I personally was out there for one whole week living on Greenleaf, which is on 51. What we're looking to do now is Councilman Teresa Cal-Smith put together a slope task force. Myself on it, a couple of individuals here from the city of Pittsburgh are on the slope task force. And what we're looking to do is be able to receive grant-funded monies to be able to go out and secure and look at landslide-prone areas to see what exactly we can do. Most of these areas, we do have to run geotech reports. Means we need to know exactly what type of soil is there and see what we can do to really make sure that it doesn't happen when landslide happens.
As part of the environmental planning function that we do in the city, there are, and I'd say a lot in concert with permits, licenses, and inspections, is a lot of view of properties that are within floodplains. So due to topography and rivers, we've got a lot of areas that do flood. And so we've been not only working on that as development comes in. So if you're renovating your house and to what would be half the assessed value, you have to bring that property up to standards for building a floodplain if you're in one. And a lot of the work that we've been doing in concert with BLI has been really around trying to address those historic issues that have happened in kind of past generations of allowing a lot of development to happen in floodplains that have caused some of these issues. And then on top of that, working through the stormwater management functions that we do, not only with new development, but working with, I think Grant mentioned the Green First Plan for PWSA and a lot of the work that the Water and Sewer Authority is doing around identifying locations for green infrastructure and for stormwater management. And so right now we're in the design phase, for example, of the transition of a park in Oakland, which is Lawn and Ophelia Park. That same park captures, I think it's 1.5 million gallons of stormwater a year. It's a park that the swing sets have been missing for multiple years and nobody has called a 311 complaint about it. It's such an isolated park and it's in a priority sewer zone. So, we're working through the design right now of being able to transition that open space into one that absorb stormwater to reduce those flooding areas in priority sewer shed. And so in one of those areas where we see the largest amount of combined sewer overflows during a storm event.
And the other thing that I would just add to that, actually two things. So in my role, one of the things that we've developed is the Pittsburgh Climate Action Plan, with Councilwoman Gross, she's still here. Through her leadership, we were able to pass that through City Council. And one of the key things that the plan identifies is increases both in precipitation, but also these huge swings that we've seen in temperature. So with the precipitation, one of the main aspects, Jeff and Andrew have talked about how we're working to manage that. But the other key aspect is looking at our city facilities. So as you look inside of the capital budget, some of the key things that we're looking to do is to make both community facilities accessible in times of crisis, but also that can be heat, that can be cold. So making sure that using aspects like energy efficiency as well as on-site energy generation and energy storage are available in case of an inclement event. Second thing is if my colleague Michael Roth in the back can raise his hand. Michael's with us through the AmeriCorps Vista program, and one of the things that we're working on with Michael is a program called Prepare Pre-GH. So currently we have about 15 different classes that we're going to be offering over the course of the summer that focus on a lot of these issues. So everything from on-site first aid, but also what can you do with issues related to your house, or your family, in terms of EMS and preparedness. Our EMS and public safety team is working with us, but also from a climate change aspect. So what are some of the things that you can do to prepare your home for different issues and challenges faced by this changing climate?
Next, I do want to be mindful of time. Here's the next table. Stand in your spots. It worked okay. Hi. So I'm going to start with a story that I told my table. So in December of 2016, I was hit by a car crossing the street at the intersection of Penn and Main. So I see that safety is a high priority. So my question is, as the city grows and we increase vehicular traffic, what will be done to ensure that regardless of whether I choose to walk, to bike, or to drive, how will you ensure my safety? Because what does housing, or what does jobs, or green spaces, what do they matter if I'm dead? Really? Yeah, it's so scary. There's no pedestrian walk signs.
Right now we are, this has been a topic actually from every single council member that we have. They've come to us and asked us for TDM. It's called traffic demand management. What it is we're looking to slow down traffic in the city altogether. If it's from speed humps, having bump outs, stop signs, etc. We are targeting that. We are going to have a TDM position in 2019 that's going to focus on nothing but that. So that is one of our targets.
Thank you for sharing your story. So one of the projects that the URA is working on with the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure are some improvements to Smallman Street between 16th and 21st. And that's taking place in front of the produce terminal. And the investment that we're looking at is around $22 million. That includes some water and sewer work underground. If you take away the $13 million for the underground work, then it's still a substantial public infrastructure project, because what you're saying is exactly what we're concerned about, is there are no crosswalks, there are no sidewalks, there's no lighting, there are no stop signs. We are going to improve the street, improve the public realm, make it safer, and it's a really meaningful project. And one of the ways we're funding it is we're looking to divert a portion of the taxes generated on the produce terminal building over a 20-year period, and work with the developer for an upfront loan to fund those public space improvements. So that's one way that we can use new development for public goods and public safety and infrastructure. So that's what we're trying to do, and thanks again for sharing your story. Thank you.
I think she was onto something. first off, safety at the top is huge, because if it's not safe, kids, seniors, families, people won't want to live here. So I don't know if it was inadvertently first, but that should really be noted as an important first. Secondly, in terms of mandates and the public support. So to your point, Miss, with the safety part is clean air. That's what I think of clean air, right? That's important. Quality of life could be like cutting the grass twice in the public parks. Like, I'm glad safety's first, because I want clean air. Like, you kind of keep in perspective all the different things that you will have to offer. I'm trying to give you credit, right? So I think quality of life is important, but quality of life varies across lots of different people. One of the things we talked about was transparency, and that's where the mandates and public support chime in. The mandates, we don't know the mandates. So you could be making decisions based on mandates that could avoid huge fines, that can keep us out of the headlines like Flint, Michigan. But if you don't share that information, it stays in a vacuum, we don't know. So that's a huge disconnect. We appreciate you acting on our behalf, but you have to share that on behalf part thereof. And the public support, I'm kind of glad it's lower, because it goes back to the transparency point. You know, what percentage of people are in wheelchairs or deaf or whatever? Like, it might not be the popular thing to do, but so it might not have the highest public support, but you're making those decisions for those people. You're keeping them in mind in those decisions. So help us understand, like, yes, it's a super expensive project, but it makes sure she can get that wheelchair up every sidewalk in the city. Help us understand that. It goes back to the transparency point. One thing we talked about was sustainability and resilience of decision making. So bypassing a fine or an obligation for 1 year is great because you don't pay the fine that year. But if you're in that same position in a year or in 2 years, is that really the best choice? It might be obligating more money. It might take a little more vetting or whatever. But we kind of want to see a number 9 of sustainability and longevity, or whatever the term could be for the decision, because there's things like longer term. And then the real question to that point, along that lines, was housing, that's good, right? That's giving the fish for the analogy. We're super interested in the skill development you talked about, because that is teaching to fish. That is helping people move on to the next thing, to buy their own home, to get on their own feet. So if there's other things that are going on in terms of skill development, we'd love to hear them. But to this point, it's all been about affordable housing as you have an option for now. I'm super interested in the option for future.
I can go a lot of different ways.
Is there approving for carpentry, for plumbing, for machinists, for are you working with the unions for these UPMC projects? Like, what's happening?
Yeah, sure. There are barriers to those programs that do exist too. A lot of those are not accessible to people.
So one of the key things that the function, and this is speaking really with kind of more of a mayor's office hat, so I'm not going to punt to you, Grant, but if you need to, if I test me, see how I do here. But so one of the key roles that the city plays is kind of a coordination function in a lot of those areas. So a lot of what you see up here is the functional nuts and bolts of city operations, right? One of the key things I think that we've done as a city team, though, is to start to create the connective tissue and the connections to organizations that are offering those direct services. So, for example, we have our colleagues at the Bureau of Neighborhood Empowerment who are working directly with workforce development providers, our Equal Opportunity Commission, to really build kind of those connections between the service providers and the workforce development space. One of the key things that we're working on, though, is to build the bridge between not just the training aspects, but with the physical development aspects that we're talking here, whether it's in housing or infrastructure development. That has been something that we've noted as a city team is a missing connection piece. So if we're making hundreds of millions of dollars in investments around the city, just as city government, there's other hundreds of millions of dollars that are being invested through the electric, the gas, the water utility, more hundreds of millions of dollars that's happening through real estate construction around the city. So making sure that we can connect neighborhood residents with those opportunities is a key component component that we've started to staff around. It's not a physical infrastructure conversation that you might see here related to capital budget, but it's part of our operating budget through our team at the Bureau of Neighborhood Empowerment and other aspects, both at the URA and our other authorities as well. So, Graham, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, that was good. So my name is Greg Gitlin. I do community and government affairs for the mayor. I will just add a little bit of specificity to this, but number one, in terms of getting people to work and getting the skills, the mayor just ended 2 weeks ago now a construction industry task force that looked exactly at this. There's a boom of construction. Who's benefiting? Is it just big developers? I think it goes to your first point too, and that was the whole point. So what the result of that was an agreement around high-paying jobs. Those include local residents, and that specifically they include local minority residents at a percentage that we've never locked in the city's history. We've never said you must have a certain percentage of minority local workers on City of Pittsburgh construction sites. So that now happens, and it's a step in the right direction. Not a huge step, but a step in the right direction. The other part of the task force was a permanent and lasting workforce partnership. So that sounds, we do a lot of partnerships, but this one's pretty serious. This one involves our local workforce investment board. It involves construction unions, big developers like Oxford that are at the table talking about how projects like UPMC can not just go union, a lot of projects go union, but can go local, can go to the benefit of neighborhoods, and you're going to see the benefit of that. And then I think the other part that gets missed, not to go back to the URA again, but if you look at the Larmer Choice project, maybe Tom can talk a little bit more specifically, but there are local workforce elements to that, to the Almano development. There are neighborhood hire efforts there, and a lot of projects around the Housing Authority does some of this work. So I think maybe on the transparency side, we should do a bit of a better job of telling that story. And then lastly, the mayor's office has appointments to what's now called Partner for Work. It's formerly the Workforce Investment Board, but there are millions and millions and millions of dollars from federal and state government that flow through that organization. It's not a government organization, although it's quasi, and they do a lot of this work. This city's Summer Youth Employment Program, Goodwill, right where we are right now, they fund the workforce development programs that are housed here. I could go on and on. There's 100 programs, many of which are focused specifically on construction, but are also on the careers that are about to take off that the mayor's office or people at the state will participate in. So it's not an afterthought. I think we can do a lot better telling that story. It's a big focus. So thank you.
I'm also going to mention, just as a side note to that, so beyond, of course, job development, workforce development, we're trying to help people start their own businesses. And that's direct, and that's for the future, right? So we're helping everyday people in Pittsburgh start businesses every day. And that is helping people not only fulfill their dreams, but to grow wealth for themselves and their families, and that is something that we deeply believe in.
So thank you. And we have one final question. George?
Our group had a two-part question, but I'd like to preface that question by telling you that I'm a recent graduate of the city's Civic Leadership Academy. And in those classes where we met with the department heads, we were imbued with the ideal that good governing is transparent and open governing. Now, in line with that ideal, we would ask you to address the secrecy involved in the proposal to attract Amazon to our city. And the city's appeal, which might be construed as a forestalling effort at making that document public in line with the Office of Public Records. And the second part of that question is, how will the resources allotted in that proposal to attract Amazon to our city affect the capital budget of our city, specifically tax incentives, for example?
There's nothing. Well, I haven't seen it. What's that?
Yeah, that one, get rid of it.
How about that? So I'll just start off saying there's nothing that I'm going to say that's different than what you've seen publicly from Mayor Peduto, County Executive Fitzgerald, and the head of the Allegheny Conference, which is that they believe that it's important that the proposals stay private, both because of NDAs that were signed and because of the information. I can say that I think that there's nothing in that proposal that will make anybody in this room feel like obligations were made on the public's behalf that they're not comfortable with. I think you'll find that, in fact, that the stakeholders were quite considerate of making sure that any boom that Amazon creates is to the benefit of Pittsburgh. I think there's a lot of discussion around what that benefit is. Feel free to laugh. But again, the mayor and the county executive made a lot of statements about this publicly. Not much more to say than that.
Great, thank you. So my colleagues right now from the Office of Community Affairs are passing out the surveys that we asked that everyone complete. But first, I want to thank you all so very much for the thoughtful questions. So please give yourselves a round of applause. And I'd also like to thank our panel for being with us tonight. Thank you for bringing your expertise to the table and for answering those questions. And for our moderators at every table. So another round of sound for you all. So we do ask that you please do not leave without filling out the survey. You can leave it with your moderator or leave it at the table, the registration table outside. But thank you all so very much for your time, and we appreciate you coming out, and we hope that you will stay engaged with the city of Pittsburgh.
All right, so a couple of quick notes about the expert panel Q&A. If you have any questions about who's at the front of this room, in front of this lovely mural about Washington, it is really cool. Page 5 has a listing of who's on the panel tonight. Additionally, we are going to be rotating. Every single table is going to get a chance to ask a question. So if you feel somebody's asking your question, feel free to move to your second one. And we're going to start off, what is your table number? Oh my gosh. We're going to start with lucky table number 6.
Hi, I am Anna. I live in Friendship, and we're table 6. Our question has to do with communication. So we feel that the Capital Budget Deliberative Forum is an excellent way to discuss and record input and feedback about the capital budget. But we are wondering about the planning for next year, if there could be a transparent process for relaying the outcome of the reviews of the projects that are submitted. We know that there's like the PDF that comes out about the thing, but you know, it's like how much of 2018, like what percentage of it got completed, and then how that affects like the 2019 budget as far as projects, and just having a more clear communication with the communities about what gets chosen.
That's a very good question. I'm glad I started with this because I can actually answer it myself. We've actually considered 2 changes to the budget. One would be to release all of the scores and rankings publicly as part of the capital budget. Another that other municipalities have done is to do, and I'm going to butcher it, Brendan knows this better than I can, but it's like an alternative funding. It's a list of suggestions for the things that don't make it into the budget, how those projects might get funded, whether it's through a grant or through a partnership with another municipality, or if it's something that might be more appropriate in a future year. Those are 2 things that we're considering. Bill, I don't know if you guys in council have anything that you think pertains to this topic, but just to go back to the spending for prior years, we do try to note that in the budget, and that does factor into our considerations. Sometimes we do get really good proposals, but there's leftover money from last year. So even though we may not fund it in the current year's budget, we know that there's an opportunity for the project managers and departments to complete the project using older funds. Let's go to this table. Oh, what's the number already? 12. 12, table number 12.
Hello, my name's Patrick Stack. I'm from Lincoln Place, 31st Ward, far stretch outside on the edge of the city. And we were trying to have a community center built within our community, such as this. And we have an empty lot that the city has pretty much given to the community group. And the way we were tasked by city council was to be able to shop that around to developers and builders as the community group. And just trying to figure out why and how we could further this process by getting a community group or a community center within our community.
I'm going to ask Marcel Newman from the Department of Public Works, and also Luann, if you want to answer from a city parks perspective, that would be great. I can tell you that a lot of those decisions start with our city planning department. Unfortunately, they are unable to make it here today. But for almost any kind of asset, whether it's parks, playgrounds, ball fields, they have a service area that they've determined is appropriate for the density of the neighborhood, that's appropriate for the other offerings in the neighborhood as well. So they don't want to have city money going towards a bunch of outdoor basketball courts if a school nearby has it, or if the YMCA has a pool. They don't want to be replicating those services. So that will probably be the start of it in terms of prioritization for the city's perspective. I don't know if Luann or Marcel want to add to that at all. You may have to turn the button on, pull it towards you.
It's on now, can you hear me?
No, sorry. I did not set you up for success,
That's
Luann.
okay. I was complimenting you on being, I was complimenting you on being a really good sound person also. I found out you work for somewhere else with really good with sound equipment. You know what, I want to say something that I work for Parks and Rec. Okay. We have a lot of rec and senior centers. But one thing I wanted to come up here and say, guess what? I live in Lincoln Place also. I would like to have a rec and senior center also, and I'm familiar with the lot that you're talking about. And I believe that was promised a number of years ago.
During public office administration.
Right, and I know the lots. I know exactly what you mean. And it's something we could research and look into. It'd be great to have a center up in Lincoln Place, but I don't know how we go about having the community come up with the funding other than applying maybe for grant money, maybe try and get some kind of matching funds. It would be nice to have something in our area where our neighbors can go and have a place to exercise, like our closest center might be at McGee, where we could go and have exercise rooms, have a senior community center where we, as we get older, myself included, we could go and have a place where we can all get together, have our meetings. Right now, I believe we go to the church there. The Reverend helps out. I can't remember his last name.
Yeah, the Presbyterian.
The Presbyterian Church, I've worked with and spoken with him a few times over the years. I know he's trying right now to get the Lewis Playground, the deck hockey. I know he's working on trying to get that moved up there, so he's been instrumental in trying to bring items into our community that the children and the youth can use to bring more amenities into Lincoln Place. I don't know if that's a good enough answer, but I mean, I'm working for our community too, because I'm a neighbor.
Just for one of the things you noted, where it's non-city funds, I see is noted in there for the criteria that they use.
Yes, we have one that's non-city that comes up from other means. Like for us, like we have a trust fund in Tennis. So there it raises its own money from the players that come in. So that would be an example of non-city funds for us.
But my question really is if there's any city resource, I know it's spread out all over the place, but any city resource for grants and that would point us in that right
Well, that would come, it's a little better than me, I think.
Yes, yeah, the Office of Management and Budget has a really dedicated grants team, 2 grant writers who help us. They help mobility and infrastructure with their transportation grants. They help with recreation grants. They've actually been really successful. It's been a great year and a half. So talking through your council person is probably the best way to plug into that process. So table number 12.
Yeah, but Dave, if I could just...
Sure.
Just real quick, I heard what you said is a lot of the funding was, I think for that particular project, there was supposed to be some development up on the hill. They were trying to get additional funds from that development. I may be right, I may be wrong on that, but I think the Urban Redevelopment Authority could also be a source of funding because they were looking at maybe a shared development. So that could be another route to go.
Yeah, there's been a couple different avenues that they've tried. None of them have been successful on the need.
Nothing's panned out yet, but keep the faith.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Table number 9.
I can't stand up because I'm in a very confined space, but Hi, I'm Zeba. I'm from Perry Hilltop. Our question is how does the city plan to do economic development without displacement in terms of what they invest in for capital projects and making sure that the community voice is included in those projects and decisions?
Thank you. I'm going to ask Joshua from the URA to answer that question. For capital projects, I know that that's something that we kind of struggle with is what role do we play in the communities? We want to make sure that we are providing great infrastructure, especially core infrastructure, to every single community and setting the table for the kind of development that the community wants. And we also want to thank OCA, the Office of Community Affairs. They're a huge conduit between departments like ours and the community. They teach me how to do this. So Joshua?
Yeah, I wish someone, I'm sorry, much more tailored question for economic development sort of department, but within development projects that are going on that have URA involvement, there is a community input process, with the P4 standards that's taking a look at displacement and a lot of other factors. Anytime a project, especially that has URA involvement, either through grants or loans, that we have to take a look at to review.
Thank you very much. Oh, sure. Sure, really quickly, please.
In terms of the P4 metrics with the URA, does that apply to projects through the Land Bank or the Affordable Housing Trust Fund?
Great question. So P4 measures, for those that don't know, that stands for People, Planet, Performance, and Place. It's an initiative that the Mayor's Office kicked off to ensure that, like you said, all projects are held to a higher standard, but also there's a great transparency on how we fund deals. Sorry, what was your question, your follow-up question? Yeah, so any project that has a budget of $2 million or more will go through the URA's P4 process. The land bank, I don't think that, I'm not sure. That's a really good question. I can definitely check in with my colleagues that are involved in the land bank, but those transactions would be on a much smaller level, and I would expect to have a community process that they will be going through, but I could definitely follow up on that for you. Currently, we are implementing a pilot year of reviewing projects at the URA, and the standards are so high that some of the projects that are smaller would really be really weigh on the project. It's hard to, if one person is buying a home and we're expecting them to meet these standards, it's more than the project can handle, but we think that a $2 million threshold works well. But we're open to suggestions. It's just a pilot year for us to learn and work out the kinks and make sure it's a clear process when it rolls out officially. But the land bank is a great idea.
Thank you very much. Table 3.
The people at table 3 are all from Mount Washington, so this question is
earmarked for Mount Washington. And we want to know why the mayor has neglected the Mount Washington neighborhood. The view is disappearing. Our sidewalks need repaired. We should have a welcome center for visitors and restrooms, with restrooms. We should have a litter patrol, beautification of Grandview, and we just feel that the mayor is not concentrating his efforts in Mount Washington, which is where 1.4 million visitors stop by every year, and it should be a showcase of the city, and it is neglected.
Director Ricks, if you want to talk to some of the recent projects we've had up here. I say that with some sure, and also thank you to the community for hosting us. It really is beautiful up here. My friends own businesses. It's always a great time to come up to Mount Washington. I can say as the budget person, given the technical challenges that hillside challenges us with, I'm always sweating whenever I see one of those proposals because I know how hard it is to maintain the view, to add the tree canopy, to make sure that we're doing the right thing geotechnically. But Director Ricks can probably speak to that better than I can.
Sure. So I'm Corinne Ricks. I'm the Director of the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. So some of the things that we're doing in Mount Washington, obviously, landslides have been sort of taking up more of our time than I think any of us would wish, and trying to address some of those. And I can tell you, for those in the room, that we are addressing them. Greenleaf in particular will be starting to get some movement in the positive direction very soon there. We are working on your councilwoman has been really a great champion of trying to manage speeds on Grandview Boulevard. So we're looking at some traffic calming strategies. You know that we've installed a couple of new stop signs on the corridor and other things to try and really manage what's happening there so that people can enjoy the view from that road in comfort, in safety. We're looking at pedestrian improvements to enhance moving back and forth on that corridor, and also looking at some sidewalk improvements in the area in general. So those are some of the investments that are coming to this district.
Thank you very much. Table 5.
Hi, my name is Robert Trinkle. I'm a resident of Mount Washington. First, I wanted to thank you all for coming out tonight and everyone here. I mean, this is great for the city. One of my questions was, with the increasing demand of ride-sharing apps like Uber and Lyft, how does the city plan to address the parking garages that are going up downtown if they were to no longer become profitable for the city?
So Director Ricks wants to answer that one. I will say that that's the parking authority is outside the capital budget, but in terms of planning for parking and how that interacts with the traffic decisions that are made and all the other projects, especially on pedestrians and things like that, they definitely do touch on the capital budget.
Yeah, great question. So it's something that we really need to get ahead of right now. Sam Ashbaugh, our chief budget officer, reminded me the other day that 15% of the city's capital budget comes from parking and parking-related activities, and with sort of the proliferation of ride-sharing and sort of the diminishment of parking demand, which we haven't necessarily seen yet, but we do anticipate is coming. It's something that we really need to manage that change so that it doesn't harm our capital budget process, but also so that we can manage the curbside uses, which is also what's going to really pressure. So we don't want our street in Mount Washington is a great example. We don't want our street curbs to end up looking like the arrivals area of O'Hare Airport or something like that. So we need to manage the curbside space. We need to think proactively about new parking structures so that they can be adaptively reused to other viable active uses, and not just sort of then empty warehouses for cars. If these facilities, remember, are built to last 30 or 40 years. If we project out into the future and see how that demand might change 40 years from now, thanks to the advent of ride-sharing services, perhaps autonomous mobility, enhanced transit, we want to have those investments still be viable investments. years from now, 20, 40 years from now, while we're still having good structures there that are part of our community. So we're thinking about that. We're working with the Parking Authority on that. The Department of City Planning is working to really have that sort of forward flexible thinking around the structures and the physical investments that we make, but also in the policies and the economic changes that are coming because of those emerging technologies.
21st century land use. It gets complicated. Table 11.
Hi, my name is Connor. I live in Shadyside. I'm a student at Carnegie Mellon. So we had a question regarding, there's a lot of development going on in Pittsburgh now. So you're seeing a lot of people who are buying up land, sort of as land speculation, demolishing structures, some of them historical, and then sitting on empty properties. Does the city have any sort of plan to prevent this, because it does cast a negative light on neighborhoods and can actually hurt property values of surrounding neighborhood or land?
Director Kennedy, if you want to answer this one. I can tell you the little bit I know about working with condemned properties. It's an incredibly complex process legally, so she has her work cut out for her.
Sure. Thank you for the question. My name is Maura Kennedy, and I'm the director of the Department of Permits, Licenses, and Inspections. So, to your question regarding people warehousing and frankly acting as a private land bank for properties, a couple ways to combat that. One, the City Planning Department isn't here tonight, but they've enacted, along with the community, several overlay districts, most recently in Uptown, to forbid speculative demolitions. So we can still demolish for reuse or demolish for true danger, but again, creating new parking lots or just speculative demolition to create sort of greenfield areas, not allowed, and we have been very successful in enacting that. So that's one thing to keep in mind and work with your councilperson about, and work with your city planner on. Secondly, being really aggressive with code enforcement proactively. So not allowing people to have these properties basically fall into disrepair, impact our surrounding neighborhoods, and then just sit on them, not investing in the neighborhoods until they're ready to cash out, if you will, and collect their payday. So making sure that they are required to upkeep the property. You know, we can't legally force them to occupy the property, but we can sure as heck make them upkeep it to the same standards that everyone else who does occupy their properties upholds their properties to. So being very proactive around land use standards, code enforcement standards, and partnering with neighborhoods. Happy to do walkthroughs or community tours with any neighborhood groups out here to, again, just be much more proactive. Also to that end, in the last year, we have re-inspected all vacant properties that are on our list. You can see that list on our website through Building Eye. All of that's updated in real time. You can sign up for email alerts on that, and any alerts for any violation notices.
Thank you very much. Table, sure, go ahead.
Also, for somebody that has, like, owns a property that's already torn down the building and says they plan to develop, how, like, is there any plan to sort of speed up the process so we don't have these vacant properties for all this time and then have them start getting developed faster?
Right, so his question for people that didn't hear it is, what can we do as a city for people that have already torn down the property? There's already a vacant lot, and then to speed up the investment process. I think unfortunately they've already torn down the property. There's few ways to sort of use sticks to compel people to move faster. One of them being code enforcement. You know, if we keep saying, okay, you need to keep cleaning your lot, if we're out there every six weeks citing them or finding them, if we have to do the work to clear the lot for them, you know, that's a way to sort of increase investment. If they realize the cost of holding this property isn't zero, we've seen people speed up there. And the other way is to, you know, offer different types of incentives. And some of my colleagues up here would be better able to speak about this perhaps afterwards, but, you know, affordable housing incentives or other types of incentives to sort of close that funding gap to make projects more viable earlier.
Thank you very much. Table 4.
My name is Kate and I'm from Greenfield, and this is an PLI question as well. We, in Greenfield, we'll call in on a 311 a building that really is falling down or it looks dangerous or it should be inspected and cited. And the problem that we've encountered is that the 311 fund system and the PLI system and the district court are not linked. So you can't tell when that property goes to court and gets an extension. And so you have to end up keeping a spreadsheet. And if capital budget can make a software system that links them all up, it would be fantastic. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so one note is Building Eye, which is our website, does have court dates. So you can sign up for an alert on all the violation notices, either of a certain type in a certain geographic area. It'll actually alert you when there's actions taken on that, including scheduled court dates. And that also, the violations on Building Eye, also, if you're the person who called the violation into 311, you can see all of our actions that we've taken on that property on the 311 alert that you've done too. On the court side, unfortunately, this is a huge frustration point for me as well. So the judges do not share their decisions with us in any comprehensive way. So just the same as you, we have to log on to their court system and Google them one by one to figure out what they have determined. So it's a continued pain point. We're in active conversation. We have been for several years with the court system. It's a real frustration. Have been spitballing with some colleagues in the technology department to solve that. But right now, it's not a lack of desire or technical capacity. It's just, unfortunately, the system's not really working well. So we still actually communicate with the court system by fax. just to give you a sense of what we're dealing with. We have a whole digital records. I have a whole wall of our office, if you've seen it recently, that is all printed out court documents because they'll only accept things on paper.
I feel better about our tech now.
So we have to fax communications back and forth to each of the 13 different magisterial districts. And that's how we schedule court dates. That's how we file anything. So it's a challenge.
Table 2.
Hi, my name is Natalie. I'm from Brookline, and everyone at my table is in the South Hills. And so we had a question about the mobility, and so it's kind of two parts. One, with the way this climate change and the storms that we've been having, 51 gets shut down a lot, and there's 3 Brookline people at this table, and we get trapped in our neighborhood. You can't cross 51 for anything. And then the other part was with walkable communities coming back, we have a lot of city steps that are in disrepair, and even if the steps are good, you can't get down them because of overgrown plants. So how are we going to address those moving forward?
Director Riggs, you're going to talk about those ones. I can say for the city steps, last year we undertook a really great project of prioritizing and cataloging all of the city steps. Looking at the walkshed, looking at the schools that are nearby, the hospitals, the connections to transit, and figuring out if this set is in disrepair, what happens to that person's walk. And sometimes in Pittsburgh, especially in the South Hills and South Side, it's a long walk. So that's been an important part of what we do in the capital budget office, is figuring out how to prioritize things. So the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, with some grant funds, was able to go through that process, and now we have a really great list that's data-driven that prioritizes our city steps.
Yeah, so David already answered my question, so, but I'm gonna let, do you want to talk about my favorite thing in this?
Okay. My name is Marcel Newman. I'm the Assistant Director of Public Works. So we got the finalized plan for steps, and we are working with mobility to figure out about stewardship agreements with the community organizations of helping us maintain some of the steps. We have a list of priority steps that need to be, first of all, rehabbed or reconstructed altogether, and then we have a list of steps that just need constant maintenance. Weed control is part of it, and we do have goats on hand to help us out with that. So, and we also have city crews. But we're also actually asking for stewards too, community stewards that would organize community events to help cut down on the weeds or do some art on steps. We have a lot of folks that want to do art, mosaic art or paint. So there's some creative things to do with them, but it is on our table to make sure we maintain.
So, yeah, I just like the goats, which I think is like a brilliant idea because it is, I mean, the weeds are a constant, it's just a constant battle that we have to keep doing. Unfortunately, city crews can't really get to all of them as regularly, I think, as we would want, especially when we hit kind of the warm, wet season. Things, you've seen it, they go like crazy. And so the goats, I think, are great. And, if we can get the community stewards, if we can expand on this program, this is a good way to do it. And I don't know, maybe we'll have Pittsburgh goat milk cheese or something, I don't know. But we have prioritized them. We do have a program to really start to improve the different city stars. They're part of the sort of DNA of this city and really important to the identity of this city. And we want those steps and those assets to reflect how proud and sound our communities are. And they should be an embodiment of, our own sort of spirit of it. So there's that. As to kind of global climate change and Route 51 and the other flooding events that we've seen, I don't have an answer for you other than to say that it is noted. And I think that while this might have been an outlier year for the amount of rainfall that we've gotten, it is a bellwether of what we need to prepare for. To make sure that we can kind of have that level of resiliency so that you're not trapped in your communities, so that we can continue to have mobility and circulation and access and continue to kind of carry on our lives and the work of government even when we're faced with some of these kind of more dramatic climactic events. So we're working on it. I don't have an answer. We're well aware, and it is one of the corridors that we're looking at.
Thank you very much. My favorite part of the goats is there's a donkey in charge of the goats. I don't know what that HR process is like. Let's hear from table number 7.
Perfect timing. My husband has the goats, Allegheny Goats Gate, so you can talk to me. I'll spread the word, that you guys like the goats. And he'd love to bring them to your communities, I'm sure. So, especially if there's funding.
They're in the south side.
In the capital budget. I have a couple questions. I'm Joanna. I'm with Perry Hilltop and Fineview on the north side. We drove an hour to the Liberty Tunnel traffic. Okay, so my couple questions are, given the landslides and unexpected expenditures, how do we know if our projects that are in the budget are going to get done? Will there be communication about that? That's my first question. And examples are Henderson Retaining Wall that's crumbling. I'm in Fineview, the Ormsby Park, and Southside Flats.
Sure, we can start with Director Ricks.
So the projects that have made it into the budget, Henderson Street Wall, some of the other capital budgets, line items that are there, they made it into the budget because they're a priority, because there's something that needs to be done. Having said that, there is a level of urgency that needs to be sort of triaged in some of these things. And so Henderson is one that we are going to push a little bit further out. It is still going to be done, but we do need to make some of those resources available for kind of the urgent in front of us, things that we need to address. So that's one, that I can speak to. It is progressing through the design phase. We're still, it is still a project that we are still advancing. It's just not probably advancing on the schedule that we anticipated, because we did not anticipate these other kinds of slope mitigation projects that needed to be addressed. So.
Yeah, for something so destructive, they're crazy expensive to fix.
Right, and so in the capital budget, we do list out all of the deliverables with each one of our line items. And we do have a small disclaimer that says deliverables are tentative and subject to change. And we do that because we understand that during the course of a year, there might be events that are going to cause a certain project to maybe be on hold for a little bit longer, or may need to be caught up in the next capital budget cycle. And so we allow departments to have that flexibility to be able to capture some of those slower moving project funds to be able to be applied to some of those projects that are of an emergency nature. But otherwise, if we put it in the capital budget, we expect that it's going to be done that year.
We also meet, our office and council budget office meets 8 times a year, about every 6 weeks, with all of the department project managers to get a sense of how the projects are progressing, what challenges they're facing. Sometimes it's a procurement issue, we can help them out with that. Sometimes the budget is not the right size, we can also try and work with them through that. So we want to make sure that we're working with the departments to help identify problems as they're happening and prevent them in the future for those kind of scenarios. Here from table number 1.
Thank you. My name is Rick Knorr. I'm from Brookline, and I'm surprised nobody here had mentioned the streets. It seems like our roads have been neglected for many years, and I can give you an example where I park. It hasn't been resurfaced in 35 years. You can't repair potholes over and over again. Not only that, I called about potholes several times again this year on the same stretch of road. They came to the neighborhood and patched numerous potholes since I called, 1 block away from the area that I complained about. But the real solution to the problem is we need to put a lot more money into resurfacing. And I see a big problem with clearing the roads since our local Department of Public Works division was shut down by McKinley Park. I think the city has to realize that we are in the South Hills. We are mainly hills up in there. So the neighborhoods up there, their priority as far as I'm concerned is to keep a well-maintained and safe neighborhood. And I can tell you our roads aren't cleared a lot of times. We had 2 major snow events this past winter, and it took us a couple days, and they never did my stretch of road that I keep complaining about. So I'd like to see the city do more to address this situation. And I know they have a lot of priorities, but if you want people to buy homes, you have to have good roads and clean neighborhoods. And that's the bottom line. Everything else, and public safety obviously is number 1 above that. But we have a great neighborhood. Of course, we all need money spent on our neighborhoods. We have our own priorities. But I think that that's a good place to start. Okay, thank you.
So yeah, snow removal is definitely a challenge for the city. It's not something that's in the capital budget, but I do want to talk to something you brought up about service area in terms of DPW. For a lot of the things the city does, especially around public safety, we are incredibly careful about where we are siting buildings, and we want to make sure that we are responding to calls in the time that's appropriate. For DPW, and Marcel, you're welcome to add to this if you want, for DPW it's kind of a double-edged sword because so much of what happens in those facilities is loud and dusty, and there's big trucks going back and forth, and so we get a push and pull from both sides of the neighborhood. The ones that have an assumption that because the building is closer to their house that they'll get services faster, and the other side that says, I don't want to live across the street from one of these loud buildings. So we try to be really careful with where we site the buildings. It's a tricky situation, but with DPW services, I know that they're very particular also about where they send people out. Director Gable especially was looking, he still is looking for opportunities to have really smart routes that are planned and designed based on the time it takes to drive. Instead of just responding to calls and coming back and responding to calls and coming back, they're actually doing some really smart routing, especially for things like litter collection. So in that sense, DPW has really been evolving with the times to have a response in a service area that's not just tied to the building itself. Marcel, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I just want to say that you did mention rerouting. We do have an RFP out for routing plan for snow removal, and the plan is to not just like we have it now for fleet telematics, where you can actually has a public portal where you can go see exactly what a snow truck has gone through, but we can also have it routed so that it picks the most efficient route, and it talks to the drivers and telling them exactly which direction to go. So you should see that actually this coming winter season. So to provide better services, hopefully.
Yep. It's table number 10.
Hi, my name is Nancy and I'm from Allentown. First of all, we want to thank 311 for very active users of it. But we also realize that there's a large percentage of the population that is not tech savvy, and 311 is very proactive. And we felt that it would be nice if there was something in the budget where there was follow-up and accountability on 311 calls that get answered. particularly from contractors who don't do the best work and then disappear, or do damage that they don't realize they're doing in snow removal or water main repairs. So the neighbors know what's going on, but they may not go to 311, but we thought maybe if they would get a postcard, how did we do? And that would open up a broader line of communication and really make the neighborhood feel like they're partners with the city instead of just this sort of adversarial relationship. So that was our thought. But we do commend you. We'd love some follow-up once tickets are answered.
You're stealing my thunder at a slide later about other resources after this meeting, including 311. We're very lucky tonight to have Wendy Urbanik, our 311 manager. Definitely a department that's involved with some great technology recently.
So, those are a lot of my concerns as well. And my colleague Laura Mike-Solt has been instrumental in creating dashboards and other tools that the departments can use to see how long it's actually taking to get things done. We're actually in the midst of a study now that I'm very excited about. You'll be sad to hear that my life revolves around potholes. And the study it's like a Six Sigma lean project to see how we can reduce the number of days it takes us to get out there and fill a pothole. There's a lot of challenges people are aware of. One of them is when the crews begin in the morning, they have to go to an asphalt plant outside the city and wait in a line of trucks to get their load of asphalt. If they're in that line for 2 hours, that's 2 hours they could be using to get other things done. So I think using our data and the tools that Laura's building is really going to help us get to the point where we can crunch those numbers a lot better.
Thank you very much. Table number 8.
My name is Pat Gianella. I'm also from Mount Washington, but there's 4 different areas of the city represented at the table, and safety was the most important thing, both structurally and crime. And we wanted to know how you select what areas get funded, especially lighting and sidewalks, especially on city property. And I have a follow-up.
One of the projects Director Reese, if you want to talk about sidewalks in a little bit, one of the projects we're working on now is an LED light upgrade for the entire city to move towards lights that are controlled remotely so that we can dim them when the weather's appropriate. If there's a safety event in the neighborhood and maybe the SWAT team wants the lights all the way off, we can do that. If they're looking for somebody and they want the lights all the way on, we can also do that. So part of that project is going to be doing a light equity study, going piece by piece and figuring out which neighborhoods are just missing infrastructure. Where do we need more lights? For us, it helps with public safety. It also helps with business development. It helps with home ownership. There's a lot of great benefits to it. Actually, Laura, do you want to talk about where we are with that project?
You're doing great, Dave. So we're in the sort of coming down the home stretch of picking a company to work with on this project, but we're definitely excited to start with the sort of baselining of understanding where we have dark spaces and where we have places that are overlit, and then helping to use the infrastructure to better that in the future. The idea then is by switching to LED lights, we're actually going to save a whole lot of money in energy, and so we're going to finance the installation of those lights using that energy savings. So it's a net neutral for the city in terms of the budget.
Yeah, the budget, I left that part out, which is a little bit embarrassing. My boss is here, and I forgot to mention it's going to be paid for with the energy and maintenance savings.
And the follow-up is there a capital project to help and repair citizen sidewalks? They're being fined, but they're on low income and can't fix their sidewalks. You have the stick, but do you have a carrot to help them?
Yeah, at this time we're stuck because of the private ownership for the sidewalks in our neighborhoods. Director Kennedy, if you want to talk about that more.
Yeah, so this is a really unfortunate area where the citizen, just like your house, the law is that you own the sidewalk. So you own everything out all the way to the street. So when there's an issue with your sidewalk, unfortunately the existing practice is for PLI to cite people. But we absolutely understand that people want to fix their sidewalk. They care about their homes, they want to invest in their homes, but unfortunately not everyone has the resources. So we're in the process right now of trying to set up, and we're in the very early stages, but we are speaking with other cities that are doing this doing some staffing allocations, and trying to set up some pilot programs to help connect people that have code issues, such as sidewalks, with resources for them. There's some good models out there to do this through sort of diversion courts, if people are familiar with drug courts and things like that, to sort of connect people with problems to people with resources. Columbus has a very successful model regarding code enforcement issues that we're looking and studying and looking to replicate hopefully here in Pittsburgh. But unfortunately right now this is absolutely a pain point. We're all very sympathetic to it. We're not looking to pile on insult to injury. We understand that it's a resource problem. But unfortunately right now there isn't a great pool of existing resources to help people repair their sidewalks. So I'm sorry.
So the good news is we're actually kind of in a bonus round. We're ahead of schedule. Does anyone have a second question that they would like to ask the panel? Sure. Getting my steps in today.
Hi, I'm Brooke. I'm a resident of Mount Washington here, and I'm sure that many of us have the same question. With all of our critical concerns and our infrastructure falling apart, just how much are we going to spend on bicycle lanes? Anyone?
Sure thing. I don't remember the exact number from last year. It was less than $500,000 specifically on bike lanes. I think the important part about bike lanes, in addition to the environmental benefits and just the out-and-out safety need that people who ride bikes deserve a safe place to drive, is that Teresa Kell-Smith referenced a couple weeks ago in council that it's become a huge economic driver. The people moving to her neighborhoods want bike lanes. Whether she thinks they're great or not, it's become a huge selling point, and she wants a piece of that action. So I think there are a lot of things to benefit from bike lanes. I understand limited resources. Everyone's got different priorities, though. Second question. Sorry.
Hello, my name is Mamadou Njai. The question that my group and I have came up with was concerning around food deserts. We wanted to know what was the city's plan of action of combating food deserts in many of the neighborhoods within the city.
Leanne, you want to talk about the City Parks program related to healthy meals during the summer days for kids? Totally up to you, if you know. No? Okay. So one thing I can say is that we've been trying to really utilize our resources, our spaces in more ways than just one. So similar to how we're having a public meeting in Healthy Active Living Center, I know that in the past, City Parks has really focused on using city rec facilities as an opportunity to give food to children in the neighborhood. It's been a great program, especially for kids who are out playing basketball and maybe don't have the means to get back on the bus and get home. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yes, Tim is right in that, what he was talking about. We have our meal service program free to the children at our rec centers. We serve it every day. We have breakfast, lunch, and a snack. We also have it at our roving art corner. I believe we have a grub-up truck that goes around to the sites to serve meals also. I was talking, we also have it doesn't fall under parks anymore, but it's in our special events office. We have our farmers markets at various sites throughout the city. I know that recently they just did the food voucher program at the senior centers, that they gave away the food vouchers. I think that was just a week ago, maybe. That we had that program going on. You can probably call if anyone's interested to the senior centers and find out more information on that.
Thank you very much. Sure.
So I will also say that we in the Department of Mobility, so there's two ways to solve the food desert problem. One is by bringing grocery stores to the communities where they don't have them. The other way is to get people from where they are to where the grocery stores are. And so actually one of the performance metrics that we've established for my department is that every household in Pittsburgh should be able to get to fresh fruits and vegetables within 20 minutes travel time of home without the requirement of a private automobile. So we have the ability to map this. We have the ability to see where those deficiencies are. That speaks to your need for bicycle facilities as well. That's one of the ways that people can get to these facilities. So While we still definitely have areas that are more food insecure than other areas, this is a performance metric for myself. It is for the mayor's office and for the Department of City Planning to try and address those areas, both by developing these offerings in the neighborhoods and really working to create 20-minute neighborhoods where you can satisfy the basic needs of home, getting to these destinations.
Thank you very much. We'll have time for one more question after this question.
Hi everyone, my name is Lori Beth. I live in Grafton Heights. We've kind of tiptoed around this several times, and I would like to see it approached head on. An improvement in the percentage of city roads being resurfaced annually. This has come as a two-part question several times this evening, and the answer has always been directed towards the other part of the question. So I'd like to hear some folks speak directly to resurfacing and the resources of when people will see their city maintained streets resurfaced within X reasonable number of years.
So let's talk about life cycle costing, everybody's favorite subject. For the size of streets that we have, which is 800 miles, I want to say? 1,000 miles, thank you. For 1,000 miles, given that it's $260,000 per mile to do a 4-inch resurface, we should have a budget annually of about $20 million. Given our current stock and the current condition, we need to play catch up, and it should be about $24 million. Last year we had $15 million, and that was the most in 20 years. 15 million was the most in 20 years. This year we got it to 16 million. I can tell you that I am a street resurfacing convert. It's not as flashy and fun and interesting as some of the other projects, but in terms of the ways in which people get to work, get to school, get to hospitals, get to see their loved ones, it's something we almost all of us touch every single day. It's important for first responders. It's important for people who ride bikes. It's important for people to move goods and services. So our office is very much every single opportunity we get, looking for opportunities to move funds from projects that may be going a little bit slow, or funds, sometimes we actually do have projects that run under budget. We're able to take those monies and move them legislatively towards street resurfacing. So we've done that, I think, every year I've been a part of the office. I'm sure we're going to do it again this year. But it's really important. We recognize that that's a shared resource. It's a core city service.
Thank you for being here and answering all these questions. 2 questions. Recycle bins. I was able to reserve one, and I was able to drive all the way across town and get it. I know there's a lot of people that either aren't aware of it or unable to go get one. So is there any plans to take advantage, any funding for recycle bins? And then part 2 is, or question 2, lead pipes. I don't have lead pipes, but a lot of people have lead pipes. Is there any plans to help homeowners with this issue? Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, the lead pipe replacement program is outside the capital budget, but I will say that a big part of what Marcel's probably going to talk about with the recycling program has to do with education, what you're describing. I think there's some intricacies to recycling that I did not even know. Like, I did not know that the blue bag system, while it's a decent interim step, it's getting caught in the sorter. So for us, it's really hard to get those messages out to people, because rightfully so, they get really excited about a program like the Blue Bag program. And then we kind of have to reprogram things once we've tried things out and realize that there's a better way to do it.
So if you're asking particularly about recycling cans, we did roll that out in First Division, which is mostly the north side, as a pilot, and we've actually developed a can size that we're happy with, and we're going to be rolling it out throughout the city of Pittsburgh this year, or the remaining of this year. So you'll be seeing your new blue cans soon.
Great.
Hi, my name is Richard. I'm from Highland Park. You raised an interesting point about what it costs to do the resurfacing of the streets. I saw, and I've had many people ask me this question in discussions, that we don't have the money to resurface the streets, but we have enough money to remove that Stephen Foster statue for 30 or 40 million. And most people, which was in the newspaper, which said that, and most people like myself who are from Pittsburgh and who went to Pitt never even knew it existed. So how do you justify spending all that money to remove and replace that statue when we have the parks falling apart, the roads need resurfacing, and how are these priorities, debated?
I didn't even know that we owned that statue. Yeah. In any case, I think that was in, I don't know what the dollar amount is, but that,
30 to 40 million, they said in the newspaper.
okay, that seems high. But in any case, we have time for one more question.
We are not spending $30 million on that statue. That was on the city cruise. That wasn't even.
So I actually don't know much about this statue, but I can guarantee you we're not paying $30 to $40 million, so I'm not sure where that number came from. I do know that we had it removed and it's put in storage, I think, with the University of Pittsburgh has offered, or maybe it's the Carnegie Museums have offered to store it, but it's not a city. We're not paying for it, I can tell you that.
All right, we got one more question.
My name is Brian Fallett. I'm from the Allentown neighborhood, and I was just curious because I don't know, are we responsible on Route 51 between, say, Bosman and whatever Kogo's comes down? That area in there, is that part of the city? The reason I ask is because the waters I've seen women pushing baby strollers in the traffic, oncoming traffic, to try to get around where one of the creeks or whatever has been washed out. They're not taking care of, I mean, there's a sidewalk and it just stops at one of the used car places. I've seen that several times, and I said, if I get an opportunity to talk to somebody, can we do something?
Yeah.
Just is it right?
No. So Route 51 is a state route, so it is the responsibility of PennDOT for the most part to keep that road open and functional. The stream clearance, which is part of what contributes to this, is something that PWSA is taking on, removing the debris so that the stream can flow freely without the backups, and that should help to mitigate some of the flooding that happens. And then, as previously noted, the sidewalks are private property responsibility to do that. So it's very complex and many, different layers, but we are working with all of those bodies to try. It is a critical corridor. It also, is a barrier or an access point to the transit as well, serving the South Hills. And so really, we understand that this is a very critical multimodal corridor, and it is not operating to the level nor to the efficiency that we would want it to operate. It doesn't have that reliability, resiliency, especially this year. We've seen it too many times of what happens, and you're absolutely right that people who are relying on transit and the sidewalks need to have a higher level of respect than is shown to them on that corridor right now.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I'll just take that one as well. So flip side of that, we're very good at enforcing on sidewalks. People are repairing them. So we just worked with the councilwoman, now the councilman of that district, to do a proactive corridor sweep. So we did a lot of research on, there's a lot of creep on those property usages and the big cars and how they're being stored. So we did a lot of research, worked with them one by one, and then when they didn't come in compliance, cited them. So please call us if you're still seeing issues. A lot of those should be getting into court right now, so you can find the court dates there. Also, just to give you a sense of scale, PLI did about 50,000 code enforcement inspections in the last 12 months, and we currently enjoy a 68% compliance rate pre-court. So call us. We're not perfect. It's still a process. Still working to hold the owner accountable, but we're very, very effective. And much more methodical. So you can track it online, let us know. We want to work with you. We agree sidewalks are very important.
Additionally, if you have any site-specific concerns about anything in the city, feel free to check in with Katie and Wendy back in the 311 table. They can get you squared away. And honestly, I'm a city employee. I use 311 all the time. It's the best way to route any of your concerns. So we're going to pivot towards surveys. They should be getting handed out to you now. I also want to do 2 quick thank yous. First, thank you to the expert panel. More importantly, thank you to all of you. I've been to 7 of these, and this is the best set of questions I've definitely ever heard. So thank you guys are laser focused. Thank you very much. So tonight, we talked earlier about how one of the really important aspects of this meeting is to get feedback from you for the capital budget for 2019. So there's 3 places that we're going to end up sharing your survey result information. One, it's going to be in the capital budget. If you look through the introduction, you can see some information from last year's meetings. Also, we're going to share them out with the departments and the council offices. This is an example of what I end up doing with all of your surveys. I go through each survey. There's also on page... Sorry, there's an example in your packet as well. That's a little bit hard to see. Bottom of page 3. What I do is I go through each individual survey. I try and see if it matches up with either a capital budget project that currently exists, a specific council district, and sometimes even a larger just policy priority that seems to be repeating through the surveys. I then make a guide for all of the departments and council offices so that they can look and not just, the 300-page PDF, but also this guide to see, I work on sport facility improvements as the project manager. I know pages 6, 29, 39, and 40 have specific details that the public has given to me about what they want to see with their sport facilities. So in that sense, get as specific as you want. Really get into the details with these surveys. And then to close out tonight, you can give your surveys to either your table moderator. There's also a box in the back on the 311 table. Moderators, please be sure to stick around for a quick debriefing, just 5 or 10 minutes. And then these are some additional resources. So the city earlier this year launched Balancing Act, which is 3 different tools. One's a capital budget simulator, so if you want to see what it's like to do our job, feel free to jump online. You can move the faders around and move money towards different projects. There's also a tax receipt, which is a great opportunity to put in your salary, your property value, and get an itemized list of where all your tax dollars are going, department by department, project by project. Obviously, there's also 311. Laura and her team worked really hard on the MyBurg app, which has a bunch of really good overlays. There's actually a capital budget project overlay. There's also the City Council Budget Office website. And you can always reach out to us, CIP, at pittsburghpa.gov, or you can just reach out to your council office as well. So now's a good time to get surveys. There are cookies, as promised, in the back. We're going to have them out on the table. So feel free to grab a cookie on your way out. Thank you very much.